بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وفقهنا إذا جهلنا وزدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا يا كريم. وبعد. Before continuing with or finishing off Hadith number 6, just a general comment to make. We're all aware that we're in the blessed month of Rajab, which is the first of the 4 of the inviolable months of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated, Minha arba'atun hurum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated in the Quran that when He created the heavens and the earth, He created 12 months, amongst them are 4 sacred months. We've now gone into the first of the 4 sacred months, which is the month of Rajab. And Rajab is a month. We've already missed, for those who are not aware, they've already missed a significant night. One of the 5 nights that Shafi'i rahimahullah said that dua is a guaranteed acceptance, which was last night. The first of Rajab, the night of the first of Rajab is a night when any du'as are accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the 5 blessed nights in the year. So even though the very first of this month night of the month has passed us by, we shouldn't let the rest of the month pass us by, because Rajab is a month of preparation for the blessed month of Ramadan. It's the beginning of the preparation. Rajab is a month of istighfar, turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There should be a lot of istighfar in this month, a lot of asking for forgiveness in this month. Rajab is a month where we start to cleanse our hearts. Rajab is a month where we prepare ourselves and ready ourselves in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after that we move into the blessed month of Sha'ban, which is considered to be the month of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is considered to be the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you turn to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then in Sha'ban, you turn towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You do kathrat salawat. You do a lot of prayers upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you do those two, if in Rajab you cleanse your heart and you plant the seed, as some of the awliya have stated, you plant the seeds in Rajab, and then in Sha'ban you start watering the seeds by kathrat salawat. You start pouring water over it. Then and only then will you begin to taste the fruits of Ramadan. It's only through that you'll begin to taste the fruits of Ramadan. Ramadan only opens up because Ramadan is the month of the believer, the month where the lights of the Quran descend upon the heart of the believer, just as they began descending upon the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But those openings that believers have in the month of Ramadan only come if you begin in Rajab and you move in Sha'ban, and then the openings will come. So and it's important that we do a lot of istighfar in this month. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot in this month. We're speaking about the heart, the importance of the heart. And we mentioned one of the ways of cleansing the heart, which is what everything's about. The whole of our religion is about purity of heart. Purity of heart. Your acts depend upon purity of heart. But one of the most powerful means of doing that, humbling oneself in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before Fajr. And that's stated in the Quran. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ People of paradise, they ask Allah's forgiveness just before Fajr comes in. And the practice of the Prophet ﷺ was to do that. He would do tahajjud in the last 6 of the night. He'd wake up, he'd pray, and then he would do istighfar. He'd do a lot of istighfar and dua. So it's something we should try and get into a habit of. And then also to remember, when Ramadan comes, if there's no preparation, we don't do anything in Ramadan. We can set high sights or high standards for ourselves, but we don't do anything. We don't do anything, whatever our aspirations are, if we don't prepare. That's the nature of life. If you don't prepare for something, you don't gain. So if we're now thinking, I'm going to do khatams of the Quran in Ramadan, then you need to start doing it now. Get into the habits, get into the practice of doing khatams of the Quran. If you're thinking that you're going to give a lot of charity in the month of Ramadan, then do that now before, in preparation for it. Whatever you aspire to increase and to gain within the month of Ramadan, start doing it now. We've mentioned before, it's already getting too late. It's already getting too late, because the blessed companions of the Prophet ﷺ, 6 months before Ramadan, they were already thinking about Ramadan. We're 3 months on. Rabi al-Awwal is 6 months before. So as soon as you move out of the month of the Prophet ﷺ, you should be thinking 6 months ahead. And the next major thing in our year now is Ramadan. So now it's Rajab. Now it's Rajab, the blessed month of Rajab. We're already getting too close to it. So we should have some himmah, we should have some aspiration now that you want to prepare yourself for the blessed month. we were looking at this, some of the Salihin based upon, this is the advice of our Shaykh they give, based upon, I think it's one of the Tabi'een, he mentions that after Isha and after Fajr to read 70 times, Rabbi ighfirli warhamni wa tub alayhi. Rabbi ighfirli warhamni wa tub alayhi. It's one of the, I think it's from one of the Tabi'een who mentioned to do that the one who does that throughout Rajab 70 times, particularly after Isha, hellfire will not touch him. Hellfire will not touch him. Rabbi ighfirli warhamni wa tub alayhi. My Lord, forgive me, show mercy to me, and turn towards me. Rabbi ighfirli warhamni wa tub alayhi. 70 times, particularly after Isha. 70 times, particularly after Isha. And that's, if you do that, then you're doing istighfar. Then you are turning to Allah. If you just maintain that habit within the month of Rajab, throughout the whole of this month, Rabbi ighfirli warhamni wa tub alayhi. You do that 70 times after Isha particularly, then inshallah, then you're in the ranks of those who seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we were discussing the heart, the hadith about the heart, the purity of the heart, the hadith in which the Prophet said, in the body there's a morsel of flesh. If it is whole, or if it's wholesome, or if it's pure, then the whole body is pure, and if it's corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. Indeed, it is the heart. And the purity and the corruption of it, the whole body being corrupted, is that you see the corruption on the limbs. The one who sins because his heart is foul. But when you see somebody who does good, when you see somebody who pushes himself and is always doing good, it's because there's a purity of heart. And the whole of the affair of the believer revolves around the heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gaze is at the heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gazes at the heart. Even the one who's profuse in his worship, the one who does a lot of ibadah, if there's no sincerity in the heart, it means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the one who does very little, just barely does his minimum, barely completes the fard, and at the same time he avoids haram, as long as that purity of intention is in place, then that's massive with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's one small little act that a person does in the whole of his life. You don't know which small little act that you do will save you. One of the Salihin, he saw in a dream, one of the righteous, he saw in a dream, and he saw it on the Day of Judgment. He saw enactment of the Day of Judgment. People were walking, carrying their sins on their backs, greater than houses, as though they were carrying houses on their backs, walking towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment. And that's stated in the Quran. On that day they will carry their sins on their backs. That's not metaphorical. He saw this in a dream, literally, people carrying sins on their back. And this righteous man, he came up and he stood and he was being held to account in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all of his deeds were put on the scale. Nothing. And this is one of the Salihin, one of the righteous people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing. They were all weightless, because what gives weight for acts is sincerity. That's the anchor. That's the anchor for the deeds on the day of sincerity. Everything he was doing, just flying away. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, haba'an manthura, dust that scattered away. Every single act that he did, just flying away. It's like dust blown away in the wind. And at the end of it, there was nothing left. And he turned to the angel and he said, because his account had finished and there was nothing left on his scale, one of the Salihin. He said, but there was one day that I gave a poor person 2 loaves of bread. Where are they? They checked, and they said, they put that on the scale. The scale was heavy. The scale was heavy. 2 loaves of bread saved him on the Day of Judgment. Now what made those heavy? That when he gave that, he was sincere at that point. Purest sincerity. And this was one of the greatest of the Salihin, one of the greatest of the righteous. All of the prayer that he did, all of the fasting, it was all for people. It was all just to impress people. It was all just because he stood in front of people. But there was one moment, pure sincerity, gave 2 loaves of bread to people who were starving. That saved them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all that matters with Allah is it's not kathrat al-ta'at. It's not the fact that you do abundant amounts of deeds. It's the purity of the deeds that you do. It's the purity of the deeds that you do. So the heart is what everything's about. We've looked at a number of things, because once we speak about the heart being madar al-kul, everything revolves around the heart. And we need now to know how to purify it and how to protect the heart. How to cleanse the heart when it gets dirty and how to protect it from becoming dirty. We mentioned 4 things in the last class. So recite Quran with reflection, tadabbur. Recite Quran but reflect over what you're reading. Empty the stomach, not to overeat. One of the most dangerous things that a person can do in terms of, and here note, this is the significance of Ramadan. significance of Ramadan. Because the big problem that we have in Ramadan, we go without food and then we eat more than we normally eat. We kind of kill the purpose of what Ramadan's about. Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, he states that in Bidayat al-Hidayah, those who've studied it, he states in the section of fasting that you should never eat in iftar more than what you would normally be eating during the day. As though, in our habits, we do qada of what we missed during the day, making up everything that's gone during the day, just fill up because of what. But here we have two problems with that. Like, when we look at significance of fasting, two key issues. One, the more you eat, the more prone you are to commit sin. The more you eat, the more prone you are to commit sin. You eliminate that during the day. Take that out of the equation during the day. The second, the real point of Ramadan is the night. It's not the day. It's not the fact that you go without food, that's the important thing. It's the fact that you stand in front of Allah at night. That's the most important part of Ramadan. And those who miss that, they missed everything. We're kind of blessed because we're already complaining about the fact that we're going to have an 18, 19-hour fast. And it's going to be long and it's probably going to be hot as well. So we're complaining about that. And it is difficult because we're not used to it. But when we talk about the night, it's very short. It's a very short night. Like for some timetables are going to have 1:30. Fajr comes in at 1:30. You finish your Isha probably 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. The whole of your night potentially could be an hour and a half. If you just make sure you stay awake and just worship during that time, you've worshipped the whole of the night. Because that's the extent of your night. And that's the ease that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you after the difficulty of the day. So that's the very point of why we have Ramadan. It's that night worship, to stand at night. When you eat too much, you become lazy, you become lethargic, you become weak. You become physically, your body is weak, and as well as spiritually, your body is damaged. Night worship, which we've also spoken about, and one of the most powerful, which is humbling yourself in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before Fajr, asking forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another important point in terms of purification of the heart, cleansing of the heart. Maybe all of these are important, but maybe this can be viewed as the most important. Keeping the company of the righteous. Keeping the company of the righteous. If you want to see where your heart is, and you want to see where your religion is, where you are in terms of religion, look at those you take as close friends. Look at what you call your best mates. Who are they? Who are they? Because the truth is you reflect those who are closest to you. And you're drawn towards those who are similar to you. You're drawn towards those who are similar to you. And people have an impact upon each other. There's no neutral relationship. People impact upon each other in terms of habits, in terms of practice, in terms of character. But here the key in terms of spirituality. Your spiritual state is impacted by those around you. There's nothing neutral within this. So if you want to get an idea of where you are in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at whose company you keep. The Prophet ﷺ told us this. He said, "Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalilh." A person is on the religion of his intimate friend, his close friend. A person is on the religion of his close friend. So each one of you should look carefully who you take as your close friend. We have another problem. Family. But there's a difference there. As we see from this hadith, friends you can choose. You can also unchoose them. Family you can't. Family you cannot. Family has a haqq over you. However you feel you are because of family. Your parents, you may feel that your parents are not helping you in terms of your religion. But your ta'ah, your obedience to them, is the essence of spirituality. There's no greater spirituality than obeying your parents. Unless they're telling you to do something that was haram. There's no greater spiritual progression. So even though you feel that you're doing less because of your parents, as long as in your state of obedience to your parents, then you are purifying your heart. That's the very essence of it. Likewise, your siblings, your relatives, you may feel that your presence with them may be damaging your spirituality. And a person who starts to practice religion should be careful that they don't start looking down upon others who are not practicing the religion, because it's a very easy trap to fall into. And it's one of the traps that the devil puts for people who practice in the religion. And perhaps one of the most severe diseases that afflicts practicing Muslims is that they tend to look down upon those who don't. And it's such a common disease that you feel that you're better than others. You feel that you're practicing. As one of our shaykh, as one of our teachers, he mentioned, you started practicing, you look down upon your mother, that she's not as practicing or as learning, she hasn't learned, she hasn't done the courses you've done. But who knows, maybe it's her dua that got you back onto the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And usually it is. She may not be doing a lot, but in the depths of the night she's crying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned you back. Usually always it's somebody like that, because of whom? And we're ungrateful. We don't know, but we're ungrateful at the same time. So the same with siblings. Siblings, they have a right, which is silat al-rahim. Anybody who's your family has a right over you. Even though you may find some difficulties, they have a right over you. And that struggle that you have in terms of dealing with them, that's some of the greatest parts of spirituality. Look at a mother. Look at a mother. One of the greatest spiritual beings is a mother. One of the purest of people is a mother. She may not do a lot, but in that space of 15 years when she nurtures a child to being an adult, she's created a human being. The service that she did for that child, she may not have a lot of knowledge, she may not have a lot of practice, but what she did is one of the greatest ways of rising spiritually. That's why when you see the faces of mothers of believers who are elderly, you always see shining faces. You always see the elderly Muslim women, you always see shining faces. You don't see darkness there, because they served a human being, one of the greatest. So when you look around you, families that more difficult, but the difficulty is not the family, it's within ourselves. Because you choose your friends, Allah subhanahu chooses your family for you. You don't have a say in your family. Allah subhanahu is the one who selects the family for you. And He's put you within that family for a particular reason. And you breaking away from that, say, I can't deal with my family anymore, so you start cutting ties, is going directly against the command of Allah subhanahu. As someone who's cursed by Allah subhanahu in the Quran. So even though you may feel that family, I'm not getting spiritually purified by them, just hanging in there, being patient with them, tolerating the faults that all of us have, tolerating those faults, they're part of the very essence of spirituality. So the real issue is not family, the issue is friends that we choose. It's friends that we choose, it's the company that we choose. And when we look at the company that we choose, if we see certain people who perhaps when we're around them, we speak ill of other people. Maybe when we're around, we sit around, we just backbite all the time. Just backbite all the time. You start seeing that and you notice that when you're not with them, you don't have that problem. Then you've got to deal with that. You've got to deal with that. Either you make an effort to change that, or when you realise you can't change it, then you cut. And you have to be clinical about it, because it's your akhirah at stake. It's the next world. It's your day of judgment. It's the eternal life that's at stake here. The people around you, they're the ones who define, or they're the ones who shape your eternal abode. So make the right choices. Make sure that you make the right choices. What's interesting is people who begin to practice religion, they split off. They split off because they may have been best mates with somebody, but then they got onto religion. He didn't, or she didn't. He just now moves ahead as though he's going in a different path in life. There will come a point where he's going to lose that person. There will come a natural point where he's going to lose that person. The reason why he should maintain contact with that person is to bring him along. If he maintains that contact to bring him along, and he's bringing him along, then that's good. But if he just wants it because he's his best mate and he's always been with him and he's always had the close ties with him, and he just wants to carry on in that way, then there's a potential that he may weaken his own. At the beginning, he started practicing, he's not, but he's best mates, so he carries on spending time with him. There's a possibility that he will weaken his practice. And the beginning, when you start practicing, that's the most difficult time that a person has in practice religion. The first months, the first few years, that's the point when it's most easy to lose practice. Somebody's been doing it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Unlikely that person's going to lose. It's unlikely that person's going to lose. It's somebody at the beginning. And that's where relationships become most important. So ensure that you have the company of the righteous. And leaving aside best mates, when we speak about company of the righteous, we're not just talking about somebody similar to you. You must always make a point of spending time, finding some time to spend time with somebody who you know to be better than you. Salihin, who you know to be better than you. Somebody who you sense that when you're in that person's presence, it changes you. You behave slightly different. That's not hypocrisy. That's not hypocrisy. If when you're in the presence of a man of God or a woman of God, that's the purification that comes from that person to you. And that tells you what you can be like. That's giving you an insight into what you can be like. So you should look in your days. If day after day after day, you do not find any one day that you're in the presence of a man of God, then your life will always just remain as it is. But if you find that you are in the presence, and the more the better, then there comes a point where something will permanently change within you. Because one thing, and we should have this as a point of belief, the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change your states. They can change your states. One gaze from a man of God can alter your reality. Imam al-Haddad in his poem, ألا يالله بنظرة من العين الرحيمة تداوي كل ما بي من أمراض سقيمة. Imam al-Haddad in his poem, a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I ask you for a gaze from a merciful eye which will cleanse me of all the sicknesses that I have. What's the gaze he's speaking about? The gaze of the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you be in the presence of a man of God, his presence can alter you, change you. Even he looks at you, he can cleanse something within you. He makes a dua for you that can change everything about you. The company of the righteous, it comes with so many blessings. So the more you find people of that nature, hold on to them. Within a time, they're gold dust. They are gold dust because people ask that, where are they? Allahu A'lam, make dua that you led to them because they are more precious than gold now. Most of them are hidden now, the people of Allah. Most of them, because people don't want people of Allah. They want people of the dunya. People don't want people of Allah. And when they do want, they don't know who they are. They don't know how to be with them. They don't know what they carry with them. So Allah just keeps them hidden from the eyes of people. They're always there. They're always there. They will always be there. The guides of this ummah that will remain until the last days are not just the guides of the outward prophetic way, like the carriers of fiqh and hadith and aqeedah. They are there. They will always be there. But the inner reality, which is the greater reality, those carriers of that, they will always be there, but they'll be there for those who look for them, who seek them out. So you want the company of the righteous. They're the ones who can cleanse your heart just by looking, just by gazing, perhaps even just by a touch. They inherited that from the Prophet ﷺ. The touch of the Prophet ﷺ cleansed many hearts. The young Sahabi who came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked him permission to commit zina, to fornicate. And then the Prophet explained to him, in a beautiful manner, explained to him why he shouldn't. Then he touched his heart. He just touched his heart and made dua for him. He said, I never felt an urge, a desire to do that ever again. The touch of the Prophet ﷺ cleansed hearts. And that's something that's inherited. So keeping the company of righteous of that nature, there's some reality too, in terms of the reality of them changing your states. Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari, Ibn Ata'illah, he gave us a way of recognizing the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think perhaps it was in the last class here, somebody asked that question. How do you know who they are? Because if we're looking for them, we need to know who they are. Make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes you to them. Make dua, we should always make dua, because they're always in our midst, but sometimes the least expected. The Prophet ﷺ told us, he said, the wali, that saintly man of God or woman of God, is a person that if you look at them, they remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at them, they remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are people like that. I've come across them. You may have come across them. There are people, when you look at them, it makes you go into a state of tawbah, that you see somebody who carries that prophetic light. Ibn Ata'illah, he gave us another standard, a different standard. He said, Suhbatul ashrar turithu su'a dhanni bil akhyar. He said, the company of the worst of people results in a bad opinion of the best of people. But then he said, the company of the best of people results in a good opinion of the worst of people. Results in a good opinion of the worst of people. Remember, that's a real principle that we should live our life by. The company of the best of people, of the worst of people, results in a bad opinion of the best of people. And the company of the best of people results in a good opinion of the worst of people. Of the worst of people. So that's why you want to be in the presence. When you're around people and they're always talking against people, they're always saying negative things about people, such that even people that you know to be good, when you're around them, you have bad thoughts about them. You want to cut off from such people. You don't want to accompany such people. But when you're with people who don't speak about people, and if they do, making excuses for them, making excuses for the faults of people, only ever saying nice things about people, only ever commending people. They've never got a bad word to say about people. When you're around those people, doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter how assiduous they are in worship, doesn't matter what they are, they're people you want to hold on to. Never let go of such a person. Because that's the very process of cleansing the heart. When you're in that person's presence, like what's happening there? He's always speaking good about people. What does that do? It puts into your heart good thoughts about people. When somebody speaks ill of another person, he will defend that person. He'll defend that person. What does that do? It teaches you an adab nabawi, a prophetic quality. A prophetic quality to defend your brother in his absence or your sister in his absence. So always keep the company of the righteous. Try and find them. Any questions on that? Any questions on that point?
Just in terms of friendship in the early stages of maybe when people are beginning to practice the faith.
Yeah.
If one finds the company of certain friends harmful, but at the same time obviously is concerned for them and doesn't just want to turn their back, how do you measure at which point how much of yourself to give to that? As in, is it just a case of if you find you're getting dragged back into old ways or whatever, then just leave it and walk away?
Yeah. Maintain some form of ties with them. Don't break off completely. With the intention that once you're stronger and you can influence them rather than the other way around, then you rebuild that relationship. So I don't think it's about cutting off ties completely. Maintain that relationship, but not as best mates. Right? It will naturally just separate. But you have your niyyah that at the moment that your faith and practice is not strong enough to be able to deal with that. 5 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, then you'll come back and with the niyyah of da'wah, you're now going to rebuild that relationship so that hopefully you can bring them along. But however close a friend is, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth jeopardizing eternal life. Family is worth it. Family is definitely worth it. So yeah. The next purifier of the hearts, which is something that will be spoken of later in another hadith. Remain silent from matters that do not concern you. Remain silent from matters that do not concern you. Never delve into things that are not your business. Protect your tongue. That's one of the hadith Ibn Dawood. Abu Dawood, he said, he mentioned, he compiled a collection of hadith of approximately 5,000 hadith. And so within that, he said he found that the whole of the prophetic way revolved around four hadith. One of them, he said, protect your tongue from speaking about things that don't concern you. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ said, min husni islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni. Part of the good nature of the Islam of a person, you can see that a person excels in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ said, tarkuhu ma la ya'ni. He leaves whatever doesn't concern him. He doesn't pry into other people's affairs. He doesn't meddle in other people's business. when he speaks and somebody starts coming to speak to him about somebody else, he asks himself a question: has that got anything to do with me? Is there any benefit? Is there any reason that I need to be speaking about this? That's an automatic question that should go through your mind. Right? Why am I speaking about this person? Is there any benefit in this? Is there any reason in me talking? Because if there's not, then you're jeopardizing your faith. Because the moment you start speaking about people, you jeopardize your faith. You affect faith here, Iman. The light of faith in your heart weakens the more and more you start speaking about people. The best thing, the safety, is always in silence. Is always in silence. Like the real believer will weigh up. Is there any reason why I should be saying these things? Is there any reason why I should speak about this? If you are going to speak about a person, it should only be good. There should never be a reason why you speak negative or bad about somebody. And this makes it a lot more difficult. So when we speak about backbiting, and when people define backbiting, they're going to say backbiting is where you speak about somebody something that he doesn't like. That's not how the Prophet ﷺ defined it. He didn't define it that way. That's our definition. We should be more interested in the prophetic definition. He defined it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he defined it as ذِكْرُكَ أَخَاكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ, for you to mention your brother with anything that he doesn't like. He didn't say bad. He said anything that he doesn't like. Which means, if behind his back you praise him, and when he hears about that, he's not happy with that. He doesn't like that. That falls into backbiting. So what's left then? Don't speak about people. That's what's left at the end of it. Because even good, you can be held accountable. Even good, you need to ask yourself the question, how is he if I was to say that? If he knew I was saying that, how would he be about it? Only if he doesn't have an issue, then you're okay. So everything we say about another person, we're always in danger. We're always in danger. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, most of the punishment in hellfire is because of the harvest of the tongue. Because of what your tongue reaps. Most of the punishment in hellfire is down to what the tongue says. So protect the tongue. Because, and again, I think year one, in micro madrasa, you're going on to the sins of the limbs. And Imam al-Ghazali speaks about seven limbs, which are channels that affect the heart. If you sin with them, like if your eyes sin, affects the heart. If your ears sin, affects the heart. If your hands, if you touch something that you're not allowed to touch, it affects your heart. If you eat something you're not allowed to, it affects your heart. All of these, the 7 limbs in the body, but the most dangerous of all of them is the tongue. Out of all of them, the most dangerous is the tongue. And that's why when he lists out he's got I think it's 8 or 9 different sins of the tongue. 8 or 9 different ways you can damage your heart through the tongue. So safety is in remaining silent, or using the tongue for what it was created for, which is dhikrullah ta'ala, which is Quran. To read the words of the Prophet ﷺ, to read the words of the people of God. That's what the tongue was created for. The tongue was created for reasons, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us indication of those reasons. Only use it for those reasons and nothing else. So remaining silent from matters that do not concern a person is one of the important aspects of spirituality and purity of the heart. The next that's mentioned, avoiding ignorant people. Avoiding ignorant people. Jahl. Ignorant people here are people, there's 2 types of ignorance here. One is called jahl basit and one is jahl murakkab. There's simple ignorance, and that's just somebody who doesn't know, and that's it. He doesn't know. Somebody who, if he's advised and if he's corrected, he'll take it on board. Then you have what's called murakkab, compounded ignorance. Compounded ignorance. Worst type of state a person can be in. Somebody's ignorant, but thinks he knows it all. That's a damaging state to be in. Somebody's ignorant and doesn't know that he's ignorant. Rather he feels that he's guided. That's a satanic state to be in. You don't ever want to be around such people. Because all that will ever happen is that they'll damage you. They will damage you. They're not ready to take on board advice. Rather than you sitting there correcting, when you're sitting with somebody who does wrong, but will never like to accept it, always thinks that he's right, cannot take any advice, has no concern about that. There's very little reason that you want to be in that person's presence. There's very little reason. The best thing for you is just to cut off from that person, because he will impact you. And even if he's not a friend, even just that short, brief time that you're with him, you're going to go away carrying bad thoughts about that person. You're going to go away thinking bad about that person. You'll probably end up in an argument with that person. More likely than not, you'll end up arguing with that person. And argumentation is something that destroys the heart. Argumentation. You never want to argue about any matter, whether it's religious, whether it's worldly matter. You don't want to argue with people about anything, because it damages your heart and it damages your relationship with the Prophet ﷺ on the Day of Judgment. Because he ﷺ said, I will not intercede for people who argue on the Day of Judgment. He cut off that door. The one who intercedes for the sinners amongst Muslims will beseech for the worst type of Muslims. If you argue, it has nothing to do with you on the Day of Judgment. If somebody's prone to argumentation, he'll turn his back on you, and that's not his nature. So turn away from ignorant people who have no interest, in the truth, no interest in being guided, no interest in being corrected. Try to avoid them if you come across them. You apply the Quranic advice. وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When ignorant people come and speak to them, they say salam. And that's all you do with such people. Just say salam. Just say salam to them. Don't engage them in anything whatsoever. Even if they want to engage you, just leave them. Just talk to a brick wall instead. Because that's the extent, that's as far as you've got to. Now, if somebody like that, just talk to a brick wall. You're probably safer talking to a brick wall than talking to such a person. Do not speak about people, we already mentioned. And the last thing, which we've touched upon before, has a significant impact upon the heart. Always ensure that you eat halal. Always ensure that you eat halal. This was discussed at the beginning of this hadith. Even those things that are doubtful, and most of what we eat, there's some element of doubt within it. Even the doubtful has an impact upon the heart, because that's what this hadith was about. The Prophet ﷺ began speaking about halal is clear and haram is clear, and in between there's some doubtful matters. He was speaking about the doubtful matters, and he said those who keep themselves distant from the doubtful matters have protected their religion. Then he spoke about the heart. So what's he telling you? To protect the heart, just stay away from doubtful matters. It's not just an issue of haram, even those things that in your heart you're not totally certain of, and just avoid it. So when you eat food, try as much as is within your control, and a lot of this is out of our control. Particularly in the issue of food, much of it is out of our control. So we try to the best of our ability to always ensure that we eat halal, and then inshallah ghafoor. Allah subhanahu will forgive us and be merciful towards us. We'll finish with that in our next session, which is in 3 weeks' time. We go on to hadith number 7, which is about sincere advice, about giving and receiving sincere advice. Are there any questions? We're done for today. It's Maghrib time now. Okay.
You mentioned about keeping quiet and perhaps not concerning yourself with matters that don't relate to you. And I can see how with friends you can do that. But when it comes to, say, your family, and you may have obligations at different levels, how do you give advice to say, and you may have competing, if you like, interests in there as well. How do you reconcile with that? I mean, because the problem with this age is that everybody thinks they know best.
Yeah, that's right. So
how do you actually, so for example, if you have like a brother or sister or a child or it's easy with
is that he's talking about you?
I'm trying to ask a hypothetical question, because this is what will, with all of us, you see, for example, like with my parents, mashallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always keep us this way. A lot of the brothers here, mashallah, whatever our parents said, whatever they said, we took it as right.
Yeah.
Whether we agreed with it or didn't agree with it, it didn't matter. It didn't enter into the
and that's how it should be.
But now for like our children and their children, it's not about that. It's like questioning everything that you kind of may say necessarily, or if you have, say, one aspect that you're trying to look after, say something you may want to be looking after your parents properly, but you're then having competing with other members of the family. How do you deal with those sort of conflicts, if you like, in modern day?
Everybody needs to know their place. If everybody knows their place, then it becomes a lot easier to deal with. The point that you raise is because we're raised now in a time where we ask about everything, where everybody has their own voice and everybody wants their voice to be heard. Islam, you have a clear hierarchy. Parents are above everything. So at that level, there's submission, unless it's something that's outright haram. Parents are above everything. If parents are saying something, then that's it. There's no further discussion after that. There can be advice that's given. There can be a discussion about it. But once the parents have said that, same between husband and wife. You have a lot of problems now because the roles between husband and wife have become very blurred. In the beginning and the end of it is that the husband has a final say in the matters. So once people know their roles within the families, then it becomes very much easier to deal with it. It's when people are fighting because their nafs is pushing them. And it's really nafs that's got out of control. It's egos that have got out of control. Allahu Akbar. Tahir.
You mentioned about eating halal and to quite an extent that it's out of our control. So could we be held accountable for not trying to gain control of these things?
If gaining control is within our control, then perhaps, yeah. Then perhaps. If we have the ability to do that, then yeah.
I mean, how far do you go to question the local butcher or the local grocer in terms of like meat coming from this kind of stuff?
There's a lot of questions. There is a lot of question marks about it, but we don't need to question as long as it's confirmed it's halal. As long as we have some degree of confidence in our hearts, then we don't need to go much further than that. But as an example, the way that farm animals are treated, there's nothing tayyib about that. It may be halal, but the way the farm animals are treated, and when there's a hadith that will come later on that gives some guidelines about that, even down to sharpening the blade, not sacrificing an animal in front of another animal. The mass production of meat now eliminates all of that. So it may be halal, and even that's questionable, but let's assume it's halal. Tayyib, no. Tayyib, none of our meats that we buy from shops is wholesome, from an Islamic perspective. And that impacts upon the heart. There's nothing neutral in terms of the heart. Allahu Akbar. Any other questions? Yeah?
Shaykh, talk about friends. You have the non-believers as friends as well.
Yeah.
Who don't take you off, they respect you for your wishes.
Yeah.
They don't take you off.
Yeah.
Do you still have that same friendship with them?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, there's no harm in that. The verse in Surah Ma'idah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء. Don't take Jews and Christians as close friends. They're friends of each other. Whoever takes them as close friends is one of them. There's a verse in Surah Al-Mumtahina that clarifies that that's about those who wage war against Islam. So if, for example, your mate is somebody who insults Islam, then you best break off ties for the sake of your own religion. But if somebody's just a decent person and you've had that relation, there's no harm in that. There's no harm in that. Yeah, there's no harm in that. I mean, think about this. You can marry one of them.
Yeah, that's a totally different. You have to cope with that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. That's the point. The point being is that if a Muslim can marry a Jewish Christian woman, he's got to maintain ties because that's his wife. So he's got to maintain some type of ties there. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids having bonds of friendship with non-Muslim, it's talking particularly. There's a verse in Surah Al-Mumtahina where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forbid you from maintaining ties with those and being just and fair with those who do not fight against you and harm you and expel you from your homes. He only forbids you from those who wage war against you. So that verse is clear in Surah Al-Mumtahina. He only forbids you from those who wage war against Islam. At that point, then you must break ties. Yeah. Allahu Akbar. Qasim.
Just you've mentioned a number of things, obviously, in relation to purifying the heart. Everyone's where they're at, struggling with what we're struggling with. Some things in our control, some things not. Out of the things you've mentioned, in terms of practically real-world advice for the likes of us or myself, what would you prioritise in terms of where we should be beginning?
Number one is the company that you keep. The company that you keep. That's the most important out of all of that. Look carefully at who's around you. And start deleting some numbers. but not his. He's your brother. Yeah. Okay, we'll stop here. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursalin. Walhamdulillahi.